With Stephen Carroll. Hi there, Stephen.
Hi, Catherine.
So despite the G20 being billed as a summit about the economy, we have been very much focusing on Syria, as have all the world leaders there. There has been some progress, though, on emerging market countries. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that's right. The head of the main emerging markets group, the BRICS group of nations, met on the sidelines of the G20. Now, Brazil and India in particular have been worried about the possibility of the US Federal Reserve reeling in its monetary stimulus program. That's prompted a huge fall in the value of their currencies against the US dollar. The rupee, for example, down almost 20% against the dollar this year. Now, to try and counter the effect this is having, the BRICS countries have agreed to pool $100 billion worth of their foreign exchange to try to create a sort of stability fund to ensure that they're a little more immune. Let's just look at where that money is coming from. China contributing $41 billion, Brazil, India and Russia $18 billion each, and the rest coming from South Africa. The idea being that if this fund is up and running and we do have this tapering of stimulus in the Federal Reserve, they'll be better able to cope with it and the value of their currencies won't fluctuate quite as much.
OK, well, give us a run through how markets have been trading this Friday.
Actually, those fears playing into the markets as well. There's a big jobs report expected out of the United States this Friday. If that's good, it could lead to that tapering of monetary stimulus in the Federal Reserve. That's what investors are worried about. Everyone kind of trading quite conservatively on the markets this morning. Just the Nikkei in the red there that you can see down 1.51%.
Okay, we're looking back here to Europe now, and Cyprus, one of the smallest Eurozone countries. Lawmakers having a bit of a wobble, though, when they were voting about their bailout agreement.
Yes, late on Thursday night, parliamentarians were looking at a law that's required under the country's €10 billion bailout programme. This was to reform the banking sector, which is, of course, one of the key industries that required Cyprus to get the bailout in the first place. What happened was the parliamentarians rejected this measure, could have put their bailout in jeopardy, but there was some late-night political wrangling, and in the early hours of Friday morning, they passed the bill 41-3. This will allow Cyprus to get the next instalment of its bailout loans worth around €1.5 billion.
Okay, a little sigh of relief, perhaps, from
Exactly.
them. We're going to move on now to a dubious honour for Peru.
Yeah, the US Secret Service says that Peru has surpassed Colombia as the #1 producer of counterfeit US dollars. One top police official even said that producing counterfeit dollars is now more valuable than cocaine. Will Hildebrandt has the story.
Looks like a small fortune is in fact worth nada. Peru has overtaken Colombia as the world's #1 source of counterfeit US dollars. Counterfeiters make up to 20,000 real dollars for every 100,000 worth of false bills they produce. Couriers then attempt to smuggle the fake greenbacks into the U.S. by way of false bottom suitcases, books, and even swallowing rolled up bills in latex.
There have been important seizures in U.S. international airports, particularly in Miami, New York, Atlanta.
In 2005, Peruvian banks briefly stopped accepting a series of $100 notes because fake bills were undetectable. Counterfeiters in Peru are some of the most advanced in the world, going beyond using just inkjet printers and even applying finishing touches by hand.
The counterfeiters reproduce perfectly the security strip, watermarks, security threads, even the texture of the bill.
Since 2010, authorities have seized about 50 million counterfeit dollars. Last year, a 13-year-old boy from a gang was arrested carrying 700,000 fake dollars and euros. And recently, the leader of the same gang was captured and sentenced to 12 years in prison.
A quick look now at some of the day's other business stories, and Apple says it's investigating new allegations over working conditions at one of the factories making iPhones in China. The campaign group China Labour Watch says it found evidence of staff at a Jabil circuit factory were working more than the 60-hour maximum working week. Apple says it's been working with Jabil to improve conditions at the plant.
The man named Africa's richest by Forbes magazine has announced plans to build plants including a new oil refinery worth $9 billion. Aliko Dangote says the project will directly create almost 10,000 jobs in southwest Nigeria. The businessman is hoping to reduce the volume of refined fuel that his country imports.
And the Russian internet portal Mail.ru has sold its stake in Facebook, earning around $525 million. The company, which is partly owned by the billionaire Alisher Usmanov, had invested around $200 million in Facebook back in 2009 before it went public. One Russian news site has suggested that Mail.ru might use the money to invest in the Russian social network VK.
Okay, finally then, Yahoo has got a new logo and it's taking a bit of flack online.
Yeah, the first overhaul of Yahoo's logo in 18 years was unveiled on Thursday. Not a dramatic change. Let's have a look at, it's still the purple sign. You can still see they've rounded out some of the hard lines and they've made
quite similar.
Second,
it still says Yahoo.
Exactly, still second O, a bit bigger. But importantly, the exclamation point at the end has been tilted by 9 degrees to add what CEO Marissa Mayer says is a hint of whimsy. Now, she seems to take a direct charge of this project, and writing on her Tumblr blog talks about all the detail she went into in developing this. It hasn't been very well received, though. Many advertising executives criticising the new logo for not being more different and changing under Marissa Mayer. One tech blogger said he believed the font is meh condensed, is how he described it, while the Financial Times, a little more kindly perhaps, wrote that perhaps Marissa Mayer is human after all.
Wow, it's amazing that people care so much about these things. But I suppose a brand is worth a lot of money to a company, isn't it? Well, thank you very much for bringing us all of those updates. Stephen Carroll there with the business news. We can take a look now at some of the top stories dominating online, starting with a first-person account of life as a refugee of Syria's civil war.
Ahmad and his family fled the war in Syria and sought refuge in Egypt. In this YouTube video, the little boy explains how Egyptian security forces came to where they were living and arrested his father, who he's not seen or heard of since. Human rights activists have used Ahmad's account to produce this video, condemning the recent arrests of asylum seekers and, more generally speaking, the discrimination against Syrian refugees in Egypt. According to estimations released by the authorities in Cairo, there are some 300,000 Syrian refugees in the country, and the United Nations Refugee Agency has registered 110,000 of them. The UN agency has also voiced concern over growing anti-Syria sentiment across Egypt. As the NGO Human Rights Watch explains, Egyptians accuse Syrian refugees of taking the Muslim Brotherhood side in the conflict with the army. And since the ouster of former President Mohamed Morsi, it would seem Syrian nationals are no longer welcome in Egypt and now need to obtain a visa before entering Egyptian territory. Activists from the Azza organization have started an online petition calling upon Cairo to put a stop to the harassment of Syrian refugees in Egypt. The document's been signed by around 2,000 web users so far. Egyptians have been expressing their frustration and boredom during the imposed nighttime curfew under the hashtag Discoveries of the Curfew. To kill time, one web user counted the number of lemons and cucumbers he could fit in his refrigerator. Another has been timing how long his kettle takes to boil. It's one way of calling, with more than a hint of irony, for an end to the nighttime curfew in place in over half the country since a state of emergency was declared on August the 14th. In this age of social media, it's not uncommon for unhappy airline passengers to take to the web to vent frustrations. But businessman Hassan Saeed has taken things to a whole new level. On Monday, he bought a promoted tweet, so a paid-for tweet, which is given high prominence in the Twitter feed of the relevant company, and used it to complain about his father's lost luggage and the way British Airways was handling the issue. And so, for the sum of $1,000, he sent a series of messages to all of the airline's Twitter followers, criticising the British company's customer service, the loss of luggage, and lack of response, and also advising people to boycott British Airways. An interesting initiative that has struck a chord with and been hailed by countless web users, who began sharing their stories about experiences with British Airways. And in view of the mounting pressure, the airline finally contacted Hassan Saeed via the social network before delivering the lost luggage. An online campaign against an airline, which is reminiscent of another campaign back in 2009, ran by a disgruntled United Airlines customer. He wrote a song about how they broke his guitar, and the track enjoyed massive success online at the time, and the company went on to apologise to the musician and offer compensation. 'Cause United breaks guitars. In these illustrations, available to view on her website, American artist Jenny Parks has imagined cats as some of the most famous comic book heroes ever. Captain America, Iron Man, Spider-Man. This collection will be a surefire hit with cat lovers and comic book enthusiasts everywhere. This video entitled "I Forgot My Phone" has racked up close to 20 million views since it was posted online last month. The short film was written by actress Charlene de Guzman and depicts a young woman who's surrounded by smartphone addicts to highlight the detrimental effect of cell phones on human interaction.
We're going to take a short break now, but coming up, sport news, and we're going to be going to Tokyo for Asia Live. That's coming up after this short break. Do stay tuned.